Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we are discussing, I'm going to go ahead and say it, one of my favorite shows of 2022, or at least it ended in 2022. Station 11, the miniseries, created by Patrick Somerville, based on the 2014 novel of the same name by Emily St. John Mandel. The premise, I think I can give the premise without spoiling too much. 20 years after a flu pandemic resulted in a collapse of civilization, a group of survivors who make their living as traveling performers encounter some violence, led by a man whose past is unknowingly linked to a couple of them. So I kind of wanted to kind of keep it vague. I didn't want to give too much away, but I did want to give you a little sprinkle of what's going on with Station 11. Station 11, as you can tell, has a lot of roots kind of based off of the last couple years that the world has been through. Being that it's 2022, and assuming you've been a fully functioning person the last 5 years and understand what's going on, haven't been under a rock or whatever, just waking up out of a coma, that we ourselves are just now getting out of, quote unquote, getting out of a pandemic of sorts. I mean, it's not technically considered the flu. For some people, it is considered the flu, but other people, it's a very deadly virus. And so I guess it's a disease, COVID-19, that being. But with saying that, I found Station 11 to be one of the most formative, comforting shows and more relatable shows, for better or for worse, in the past 2 years. I think it is one of the best pieces of media that kind of reflects of what the world has had to go through to an extent. Now, obviously, Station 11 goes to the nth degree of showing the deterioration of all civilization. But the first episode really encapsulates what it felt like to be on boots on the ground, kind of living through the actual pandemic. Within the first month, I think it was in March of 2020 when the world kind of started to shut down, and major events and festivals and industries. I remember the NBA was one of them, in the middle of March, just decided to shut down. And ironically, speaking of shutting down, the first episode of this miniseries that was based off of a fictional pandemic had to close down the production for the real pandemic to happen. So I believe it had happened towards the end of the first episode when they were shooting it, that the actual pandemic stopped the show from being produced for a time being. And then they returned several months later to continue the show after the pandemic had already kind of set in. The COVID-19 pandemic had already set in, which is crazy ironic. Considering real life and how it was mirroring real life before that had actually happened. Anything from people running to the grocery store and grabbing all of the toilet paper and food they could get, to experiencing in real time where people would be when they were told that they had to wear a mask in certain locations. When you're in certain bunches of groups, some people were immediately, overreacting. Some were underreacting. Some people didn't believe it. This show feels very much of that realm, and it just encapsulates so much of what I feel like a majority of people were feeling. And for a long time, I was kind of stalling actually recording this podcast because I didn't know how I wanted to present it. I didn't know if people were going to be interested in it. But from what I can tell, the majority of the critical consensus of it is that people absolutely fell in love with Station 11 just as I did. I wasn't even sure if I was quote unquote in love with the series until about episode 9. I think that it definitely is on this tightrope of the very bleak drama, dystopian fiction, post-apocalyptic, with just a splash of lightheartedness and a little bit of relatability and comedy here and there, but it's not a comedy at all. There's just a couple funny scenes here and there. But with saying that, I enjoyed these characters so much that I've actually watched the series twice. And I told my mom that she has to watch it as well, just to kind of understand it and not really, you know, don't watch too much of the marketing for it or anything, because I feel like it kind of spoils what's going to happen. I love just having this show kind of wash over you, and the emotions that you experience feel so visceral and real. The the people behind it include the creator Patrick Somerville. He's also a novel writer, but he's also a writer on. He's got published novels, The Cradle in '09. The second novel was The Bright River in 2012. He joined the writing staff of The Bridge in 2013, wrote 2 episodes of the series from 2015 to 2017. He was a writer on HBO's series The Leftovers. That's one of my top 10 shows of all time at this point. Another show that's very visceral to feel, and every episode felt very highly emotional in all of the best ways. Like sometimes you just need a nice cry, and I felt like his touch in The Leftovers just felt just so real. It feels just so grounded and real. In October 2016, he was announced that Somerville would write the Netflix series Maniac, and that had Emma Stone and Jonah Hill starring in the lead roles, and had some other recurring favorites, and like Justin Theroux showing up as well from The Leftovers. But Maniac was once again very different in form, with all these different genre bending types of episodes and whatnot. I really enjoyed it. It didn't quite hit that emotional eclipse that his other shows have really hit with me, but I really enjoyed the aesthetic and journey that we went on with Maniac. I also covered that as well on the podcast. In 2017, December 2017, he signed a deal to develop a new TV and digital projects exclusively for Paramount Television. Now Paramount Television Studios. In 2019, it was developed that he would be the writer and showrunner for a 10-episode HBO Max miniseries, Station 11. He was the showrunner for the first season of the series Made for Love as well. I think that's on HBO Max as well. Pretty sure that just recently, unfortunately, got canceled around season 3. I know Discovery is slashing a whole bunch of budgets and slashing a whole bunch of shows, but anything Somerville touches, I'm absolutely willing to go check out and kind of just let it wash over me. I enjoy his writing and his sense of storytelling. I feel like it's very grounded in the way that it's shown, or expressed. It's a lot of show don't tell, and I feel like there's so much expression on the characters' faces that they choose. The actors, Mackenzie Davis, Amish Patel, Matilda Lawler, one of the Matilda Lawler being one of the young actresses starring in this. I was floored by this child actor. Every time I see a really good child actor, I like to give them praise. It's not very often you see a child actor that can pull emotions out, such as and express emotions in the way they can, just because they don't have the life experience to really draw upon. So when they do, I'm just like, holy shit, this is an amazing little actress or actor or whatever. Um, Another actress I can think of off the top of my head would be another actor I'm thinking of is the new actress on Obi-Wan, which has really blown me away too. Let me see. Let me see if I can get her real quick. Vivian Lyra Blair. I think she is a fantastic young little actress as well. I'm always floored when they get someone amazing. Um, so yes, Matilda Lawler was the young actress in Station 11, and I was floored by her. Every time she was on screen, uh, I felt for her. You know, there's so many scenes of this season that require such difficult, deep, dramatic ties to kind of pull from, that I was just surprised that they could get this kind of performance out of her, and all of her supporting cast do an amazing job. Hemish Patel, I've never seen him in anything. One, he is a handsome ass dude. Apparently he's in Don't Look Up. I don't remember him in that. He was in Tenet as well. Don't remember that. Don't remember seeing him in that. Must not have had a lot of time. But he was phenomenal in Station 11. It's one of my favorite new actors that I'm kind of discovering for myself. Um, I think he's actually from England himself, so um, he's probably in a lot more English roles than American roles. But I'm like, dude, this guy is fucking. He is on fire. I've seen Mackenzie Davis perform, or what I see her in. Terminator, Black Mirror, Blade Runner, obviously. Apparently she's in Tully as well. She's got a hell of a list under her, under a filmography under her belt too. Um, she was, she plays so many different aspects of this character that I'm just like, I was floored. Like I said, all of the characters in this, there are no small parts. Um, Let me see what we can talk about before going into spoilers of this. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to cover everything of Station 11 and be fully satisfied with it. So I'm going to try to go as swiftly as I can before we talk about spoilers. But yes, like I said, this story feels like the most relatable story to the times that we're living in right now. I know that hopefully, and assuming that things smooth and pan out eventually in the next few years, that COVID hasn't gone anywhere, but our masks have been told that we don't have to wear them everywhere. There's parts of the pandemic that while I was watching this show, we still had very high restrictions, a lot of testing going on, a lot of got to get your booster shots every couple months. It's a very surreal thing to have to go through, especially for me. I still feel like I'm at a relatively young age in my mid-20s. But no matter what age you're at, I don't think anyone has experienced anything to this degree. And so watching this series just felt so lived in. It felt so real. I've gone back and watched things like movies like Contagion or Outbreak or something, and I still don't think that they really hit on the emotional side of what a pandemic really does to an individual or a group of individuals. So essentially, we are following the Traveling Symphony. It's like a group of traveling performers, like I said earlier, and they kind of stay around this certain belt lake in a specific area, and they perform for different troops and people and stuff like that. And they are putting on entertainment. There's so much meta talk about what art does for the human soul, and what art does after something catastrophic happens, like a pandemic. Like, there's so much of putting up a mirror to society or to reality of what happens after something like this really goes down. So yes, it's a fucking journey. I got to say that the journey of Station 11 really comes down to um, kind of being introduced to the Mackenzie Davis character. And I'm not going into spoilers yet. introduced to the Kristen Raymond character, or Kirsten Raymond character. And we meet her at such a young age, played by Matilda Lawler, that we become ultra endeared to her. And over the course of the series, you feel like you have lived multiple lifetimes with these characters and how far they have to travel and go and do and express themselves, um, just to survive, you know? And I think one of the coolest things about this is it kind of feels like small bits and pieces of, you know, your favorite apocalyptic type television shows that you would see. You would get to see the before the downfall, you get to see the after the downfall. You know, it'll straight up, the editing in this will show a train stop, you know, a couple of years before the pandemic, busy as hell. Then all of a sudden, just like that, it goes down. And they'll do just a quick flash forward and they'll be like, this is what's going to happen to this spot in 20 years. And it feels like that's kind of what happens with the characters as well, and kind of understanding some of our main characters and the kind of non-linear storytelling that we're getting throughout this, but yet we're still connecting with them so much, and the ways that they kind of feed the different timelines and the different characters in different aspects and parts of the show just are absolutely it's an endearing ass show. I just feel like you just feel for these characters, and I just want to give everybody a hug after this one. This one uh is one of those shows that it's perfectly paced. It's slow for the right reasons, as in we don't need to go fast, but when it goes fast, it just fucking pops off. And the pacing is amazing, the acting is amazing. All of the technical aspects of the show are some of my favorite that I've seen probably since The Leftovers, and some of the surrealness as well. There's some parts about it that kind of are like, you know, is that real? Is that happening? Is it not? You know, kind of a little bit of fantasy, that type of thing. But I was just like, I was um I was floored by it just because I wasn't ready. I remember just turning it on, and it was one of those shows that, you know, I like Mackenzie Davis. I like I knew about Patrick Somerville, so I kind of had like a little bit of a small smidge of an idea, but it just grew into an elaborate story that um I was in love with it. I just really love this story. I love the actors, the characters in it just feel so lived in and real. And it actually does sound like, based off of some of the interviews I've heard from Patrick Somerville, that, you know, the actors really put their heart into this, because I do believe that the majority of the series was shot out of order, but it was also shot during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, which people were still kind of figuring out, how are we supposed to navigate doing art at this point. And I guess it was almost like cathartic in a way that people were just relating to it on that degree. Like I think you can tell in television when people are really enjoying what they're doing. It elevates the content in the media and the TV or shows or whatever, the movies that you're watching, because it's just like another level of the performance that can't really be duplicated in anyone else. It's just like you can tell that they are that character. um so yeah, I was floored about this show. We've got some Atlanta directors, think like Hiro Murai, Jeremy Posada. Um, I don't know what is he from? He's done some HBO stuff as well. Um, he did some 6 Feet Under, Nip Tuck, yeah, Rome, Dexter, all that good stuff, Weeds, Boardwalk Empire. He's done a ton of stuff. Um, yeah, so they have some long time um, longtime directors. I think Helen Shaver did one of my favorite episodes as well. Long time film, has a big filmography in it as well. But anyways, without going too much more in depth about it, I gotta say it was episode 9 was the one that I decided, I was like, I gotta tell everybody about the show. I gotta tell everybody they gotta watch it. It is an emotional roller coaster of a ride. It might be a tad slow here and there, but once everything falls into place, um, by the end of the series, I just felt like I had witnessed something that doesn't come around in the, the film universe, the TV universe, but maybe like once every 10 years. I mean, I like this up there. This might be some of my top 10, um one of my top 10 shows as well. I like Mr. Robot that much. I like The Leftovers that much. Station 11's up there with some of my favorite media. I praise it kind of in the same way I would talk about Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad might be a little bit more stylistic, but this is so much more real, and you just experience this journey a whole lot different than a lot of television shows. And the grand scale and scope of it makes it feel like nothing else to this degree, especially in the uh, 10 episodes it has. I think, what is it, 45 minutes to 60 minutes each episode. And this is one of the shows I just don't think they have any flab on. I'm just like super surprised. So let me see. Hold on. Okay. So we're going to start talking about spoilers of this television series, for people that have already watched it. I really want everyone to watch this television show before I spoil it for you. So if you haven't seen Station 11, please just pause the podcast, come back to it after you've watched the 10 episodes, and then indulge with us on some of our favorite parts for the season. We'll talk about the things that we really loved about the show. Maybe have one or two critiques on it. The small critiques I have are so minuscule that it really didn't affect my viewing. It's just something I kind of noticed. Yeah, let's kind of transition. I do want to talk a little bit about the differences from the novel. So we'll start off with that. Spoilers for Station 11 season 1, and the only season at this point, starting now. The differences from the novel. Somerville made several major changes from the original novel's plot, such as creating a more significant relationship between Jeevan and Kirsten. In addition, the Canadian setting of the majority of the novel is replaced with an American setting, though much of the year zero setting is in the original novel is set in St. John Mandel's natives, the writer's native Toronto. Somerville moved the action to his own native Chicago, ironically due to the COVID pandemic. Shooting was moved from Chicago to Mississauga, I think Mississauga, I think I'm saying that right, or whatever. Suburb of Toronto. So it's funny because they changed the setting, but then they had to switch the setting. And then they actually switched back where they were actually shooting as well. So let's kind of just talk about broadly what happened during this season. Young Kirsten is a young actress, and they're performing King Lear, and then eventually a doctor, a quote unquote doctor. He's not really a doctor. He's more just knows, I guess, medical stuff. He wanted to be a doctor, but wasn't. And he sees one of the main actors, played by Gail Garcia Bernal, amazing actor as well from, Coco, among other things. He sees Arthur Leander die right on screen. He's formerly married to Miranda and Elizabeth. father to Tyler. And so every single person has a specific tie-in to how they are part of the story. It's almost like you're getting different vantage points from the different parts of the pandemic, from who created Station 11. I think that was Miranda. She, created the actual book, and it was passed down from Gail to, or from Arthur to young Mackenzie to Tyler. And I believe that it just continues on. And there are small specks of the story of Station 11 that are reflected into the actual television show, into the actual story. And that's kind of how the Tyler and Kirsten characters kind of get intertwined. And through these 10 episodes, we understand how the traveling symphony works, how people are living these days, especially these people. We get some flashbacks with one of my favorite characters, played by Hamish Patel, and Naban Rizwan, playing Jeevan Chowdhury and Frank Chowdhury. And there's so much backstory and lived-inness of these characters that Jeevan has so many things going on from an emotional standpoint that I was immediately endeared to him as a character, and how he didn't really want to take care of this young girl, young Kirsten, but he's tasked with basically making sure she's okay and getting back to her parents basically the same night that the flu pandemic was starting to hit everywhere. And this series starts off with them, a crowded theater of King Lear being performed. And, you hear people coughing in the audience, and this level of detail of how it felt like before the pandemic, when people were freaking out in the hospitals, getting in wrecks and craziness and stuff like that. The flu that they have in this television series is a much worse than, or I don't know if I want to say much worse, but I think that from the severity of it is much higher. It seemed like if you were exposed to the flu, this flu in Station 11, that would probably within like 24 hours you were going to be taken out. I mean, we see anything from the destruction of planes coming down to I don't know, the fighting that happened between right outside of hospitals, trying to figure out how the collapse of civilization is going to affect everybody. And so kind of seeing that in real time, or kind of sort of experiencing it in real time in March 2020, and then seeing it on this television show was just so surreal. And this is beautifully shot the way it's done. Even though the show is a very heavy material, the cinematography never lets you down, and you're outside a lot when they're shooting. I'm sure it's for COVID reasons as well, that shooting outside was probably better, a little bit more safer for the cast and the crew. But it definitely, I don't know, it felt lively in the ways that it really needed to be. And there's a handful of cinematographers and editors, and I would give them all a shout out, but would be here all day. I just got to say, everyone from the technical standpoint does an amazing job. And so, like I said, we are there, boots on the ground from day one, experiencing all the minute details of Station 11, and also us internally remembering how stressful it was at the beginning, and now all these small proclivities that people are having to live with post-pandemic, quote unquote post-pandemic, kind of returning back to normal of how do we act now that the pandemic was relatively not behind us, but the numbers aren't what they were, the hospitals aren't getting overflown at this point. I'm happy that that's happening, but COVID in the real world, our real world, the virus is still circulating, but it's not coming out. So far, the death toll, I believe, has dramatically dropped to about the levels of like regular flu levels, but I need to kind of go back and check. But anyways, this flu that's in the show was much deadlier on a time scale. I think they say they take out like it took out like a much larger percentage of the world, and it's a lot more depressing of a pandemic that's happening in this television show. So I just kind of wanted to bring that to the forefront, just in comparison of what really happened in real life. So probably the easiest way to kind of go through this is to go through the different characters of what happens. So we see young Kirsten. She's eventually she's taken in by Jeevan's character. They stay with Frank. They have an amazing rapport together. They just have they have like a sweet little family that they end up kind of forming, and it's so, I don't want to say ironic, but it's so unconventional that it's just nothing but, it's sweet to watch. And so we have Jeevan, we have Frank. Jeevan was an audience member the night of the pandemic who takes care of Kirsten throughout it. And he claims to be a doctor to try to save Gail Garcia Bernal's King Lear's character at the beginning of the series. But later, I just want to go ahead and kind of talk about what happens to Jeevan. Eventually, he has to go out on his own, or he takes Kirsten to Frank's place. Frank is Jeevan's brother, who's kind of a recluse, and he's got an injury that has left him, disabled. And the rapport between those three characters is amazing. There's an episode 7, I think, that there's like a what is it? Tribe Called Quest, I think, is evoked, and there's some musical cues that come in, and I was just like, their ability to balance this dramatic story that makes you want to feel like you want to start crying every couple minutes, to them having like a little bit of lightheartedness and hip hop kind of come in to kind of give a little bit of life to it. It's just phenomenal. I was like, how did you, I've watched it twice and I still don't know how they were able to kind of interwove it, but I was very surprised that they were able to do that. And yeah, I was floored by their three, Matilda Lawler, Hamish Patel, and Naban Rizwan. All three of their characters kind of shared the majority of the screen time together, and I was just like, these some of my favorite characters on screen in a very long time. Likable characters. I just got off the podcast talking about Barry season 3, and I love the television show, think it's technically amazing, but I don't like any of those characters except maybe like one or two. I think the majority of them are very hard to watch and relate to on many levels. And I do find myself more recently kind of gearing my my likeness of television shows and movies towards television, that or towards characters in both of those mediums, that are more likable. I guess it's just my type of television these days. I'm sure that my taste will change here and there, but I just thought that the characters were, the kind of people that I would enjoy being around, I guess, and that I think that I just have had a better time watching him. And so, continuing on, we have Clark Thompson, played by David Wilmot, another amazing actor. That he's actually, it's funny because all of these actors in the television show, the Station 11, are playing actors on Station 11. So they're actors playing actors. And so it does feel like a little bit of meta commentary about how people perceive art and how you should, kind of carry yourself as an artist, that kind of thing. And then they talk about how, the pandemic in the television show, affects art, and how, do you take on the personas of some of the art. Clark Thompson, Clark's character really was, he was Arthur Leander's former best friend, who now leads an isolated compound at the Sovereign City Airport. And he basically was he's an alcoholic. He plays a gay man. There's a lot of backstory with him about how he's really jealous of Arthur Leander's success. And Arthur Leander wasn't a perfect guy by any means, but it seemed like so many more people liked him as opposed to the Clark Thompson character. And David Wilmot plays it so spitefully in the best ways. Like and there's flashbacks with him and Arthur. And I wish there was honestly more Arthur in the show, but the scenes that we do get him in are just phenomenal when it comes to having him, Arthur and Miranda, Arthur and Clark. There's so many different scenes that kind of Arthur and Kirsten, young Kirsten, just kind of endear you to these characters that show that they are fully fleshed out characters that have real lives, and we're not seeing just the bullshit minute details, or we are seeing the minute details that make them who they are, but we're not seeing bullshit minute story of them just doing their everyday thing. It feels like everything that they're doing and shown and feel with purpose. It's just so well scripted, in my opinion. It doesn't feel like it was up to thought at all. We were like, I don't know, maybe just making him an alcoholic asshole. It's like he's not an alcoholic asshole. He's so much more than that. It happens to be an alcoholic, but he has so much more depth behind him. And not to say that, talking about likable characters, he's not like the most likable character at all, but you understand him so much more to the point where it's like he's sympathetic to a degree. So Daniel Zavato, or this is where we're getting into really heavier spoilers, as Tyler Leander, the son of Arthur and Elizabeth. He leads a group of rogue children, and Julian Oberdors as young Tyler. I just want to give him another shout out. Young Tyler as well, played by Mr. Oberdors, another great young actor. Really has to bring a solemn role to what he's experiencing in this television show. Young Tyler is before the pandemic even sets in, he's kind of already solemn and upset a little bit just because of how his parents really don't get along, and he was there the whole time to kind of see the thing kind of fall apart, and hear the terrible things that Clark has to say at some points. But there is so much of a tidal wave being built behind the Tyler character that once we have the reveal of who Tyler is, it's just like, holy shit, this was there the whole time. Like, he didn't kill himself. He did, he's been leading the pack. We saw him in episode 2. There's so much of like what happens in episode 2 and 3 that feel like you don't really understand what's going on until maybe 8 or 9 of the episode 8 or 9 of the series. And that's why I think it took till episode 9, like there's a formative flashback of what feels like another subplot of Jeevan becoming a doctor that is just absolutely it's so moving. It is absolutely one of the most moving things I've seen on television in a long time, that this guy Jeevan kind of down in the dirt, didn't his family, we see his backstory that he was not like the most successful in the family. He's like a writer. He's a reviewer of some sorts, and he's not the famous writer, the successful writer that his brother was, or the nurse that his sister was. But this is where he really shines. And I think what they say, one of the characters says, it's to be a doctor or something. I'm going to get this quote wrong, but basically one of the characters says to him, one of the other female doctors say something like, that he runs into in episode 9 is it's not the schooling or education that make you become a doctor. It's kind of the ability to understand and I think they say bear witness to death and pain, and help people out of that. And that's exactly what Jeevan's doing by episode 9, despite his reluctance to kind of really go forward with what he's doing. And he becomes so much of a real person by episode 10, when him and Kirsten finally reunite, and they're giving each other hugs. I wanted to just grab my television and hug them too. I was just like, even talking about it, it kind of gets me a little bit emotional, about how good these characters were together. And what's interesting is the Mackenzie Davis actress and um and Hamish Patel don't share tons of screen time together. It's actually the Matilda Lawler and Hamish Patel are on screen more together. So it's almost like, um, it's the combination of Mackenzie Davis embodying this character of Kirsten, the same way Matilda was embodying Kirsten, and just them being able to basically become that person, that character Kirsten. And Jeevan obviously stays the same age the whole time because he was an adult when that happened. But there's a 20-year time jump in between when Kirsten loses Jeevan, and for crazy reasons, they're out, they have to leave Frank's apartment. Frank is attacked by this guy that busts up in there, says like, this is my apartment now, bitch. And he's like, they're trying to do like this play that's happening in the Frank's apartment. They're like reenacting like a Station 11 scene, and Station 11's like a comic book kind of thing, that Kirsten wants to reenact because they're stuck and bored for, I don't know, like I think that it was either 90 days or 180 days or something like that, but they had to leave the apartment to get, I guess, food and everything else. But they decided to leave one day later so that they could make costumes and actually perform as astronauts and whatnot, as doing this play. But then while they're doing this play, this guy fucking shows up and beats the shit out of Jeevan, about fucking kills him. I thought Jeevan was going to get raped in that scene. I was like, Jesus Christ, please no. And we have young Matilda Lawler's young Kirsten having to hide in another room because, I mean, what is the little girl going to do to this fucking what looked like a damn 6'5", 300-pound man or something like that, attacking Jeevan and Frank. And Frank is obviously injured and stuff like that. But Frank is I think Frank is stabbed, and then what is it? Jeevan is attacking this guy, and there's this big brawl fight, and the camera work is amazing. It's so smooth, and it's not cutting all over the place. It just feels like it is, and it's extremely hard to watch. And eventually they do get out of it, and that's what Frank does not make it. He says he's not leaving his apartment, he's not leaving his home. But that guy ends up getting, Jeevan kills that guy that killed his brother, and takes Kirsten, and then they run off towards, I think, a lake. And once they get to the lake, they stay at a cabin, and from the cabin, they're both kind of having cabin fever to an extent. They're hunting and whatnot. Kirsten's training, throwing knives, and they're hunting wolves or whatever else animals that are coming up. And eventually, I think Kirsten and Jeevan are kind of out scouting one day, and when they're young Kirsten, when young Kirsten is really indulged in the Station 11 book, when she's supposed to be keeping watch, Jeevan is attacked by what looks like a heavier set motorcycle rider, shot with a damn, I guess, beanbagger of some sort. And eventually Jeevan has to take this motorcycler out. And then that's where the whole divide happens of young Kirsten is too, he says she's too obsessed with Station 11 comic book, and it's going to get them in trouble. And he kind of takes the Station 11 comic out of young Kirsten's bag, like one of her only things of entertainment, pieces of entertainment, and he throws it in the middle of the snow. And eventually she finds out a few hours later, and she gets really upset with him. And Jeevan's like, you know what? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And then he goes back out into the night, and of course, fucking gets mangled, attacked by a goddamn wolf. And it is like, it's one of those things. They kind of did the same thing on Barry season finale, but there's this the wolf is not really shown on screen. It's like a very, you see the top of the wolf attacking Jeevan, and then the slow pan back, and and you find out that Jeevan is just fucked up. Like, he's bit, he's got wounds, he's all messed up. Um, and he's eventually kills this wolf, but he is fucked up and he's stuck in the middle of the snow, probably like a couple miles from the cabin. And he starts to make his slow way. He like basically crawls in the snow, and they go straight up Revenant with it, like right after the bear attack, kind of in that. But they like, he is just struggling, and it is a fucking like visceral fucking piece of media to watch Jeevan go through this. And as soon as he's about to get to the cabin, this motorcycle rider, who we don't know who it is at first, pulls up, picks him up, and we're like, God dang, no. And when she takes him, Kirsten is basically left alone, and she's we flash forward to her in an earlier episode, kind of way after that, and she's like a feral little lost child when she's picked up by Laura Petty's character, Sarah, who's one of the co-founders of the Traveling Symphony. And that's kind of where we're introduced to how Kirsten gets introduced to the Traveling Symphony. And I was just like, this is a lot to handle. And of course, a lot of people know Laura Petty as from Orange is the New Black, but she's been in a lot of stuff. She was anything from, I don't know what Tank Girl is, but she was in it. League of Their Own 92, Free Willy 93, Point Break 91. A lot of people know that. But yeah, I know her from Orange is the New Black, basically, most recently. And I was really floored with the performance that the Sarah character is bringing, or Laura Petty's character Sarah is bringing. I was I just the performances on this are so good. Let me talk a little bit about Danielle Deadweiler as Miranda. I think she might have like 2 or 3 episodes in Station 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, she has 5 episodes, but I don't feel like some of her episodes really have tons of her in it. So her limited screen time is it's felt. It's absolutely felt. There's an episode, I think episode 3 really focuses on that character, and we're shown the pandemic, what happens if we were outside of your country or your hometown. It's not just like being outside of the US. I'm sure that's very specific to what it is, but imagine if this pandemic was happening and you were in, Beijing or Portugal or Europe or anywhere outside of, where you're normally from. And it looked horrifying because everyone's panicking to get home. And so she has to make some very executive decisions about, making it back. And, if you're exposed to the virus, you're almost immediately going to be done. You got to be quarantined, that kind of thing. And, that type of stuff. What's interesting about this is that even though the kicker and the thing that really kicks off the show, the Station 11 miniseries, it's not so much about the virus at all. It's not like a lot of these shows, think about like maybe The Walking Dead or any other post-apocalyptic movie or show you can think of. Normally the end all be all is about finding a cure, finding the sense of normalcy, and finding community is not normally the utmost, or finding, how we continue to produce and talk about art after the world ends. But that's what this is about. This is not so much about the virus. It's not so much about the pandemic. Yes, the pandemic was the antithesis of what happened, but it's not like they're actively talking about it anymore. I guess it's to the point where if you got it, you got it. If you don't, you don't. Um, but it's more or less about what happens next. And I was totally here for it. I'm totally here for it. And like I said, uh, kind of going back to the beginning and wrapping it up. Going back to the end of the series. By the end, Jeevan has become uh, a doctor, almost like an OB. I think it's called an OBGYN. Is that who delivers babies? Isn't that what they are? I'm not a doctor or anything, so I don't know my doctor categorizing. But basically, he's delivering babies, and when he's introduced to this like all woman compound that has just a bunch of pregnant women in there, he's like kind of in shock at first, and he's like, am I dead? And they're like, nope. And and as a matter of fact, we're going to need your help. And I was just like, wait, all these women are like, I was going to say incubating, I don't think that's the right word, but all these women are like timed at the same time to have babies, almost all at at a specific date. I was like, gee, I had a lot of questions about how all that happened. But yeah, basically they have to repopulate the earth, and Jeevan is almost like this messiah that has come down from the gods, hypothetically from the gods, that is there to help deliver the babies. And he's really become one of the main antithesis of, quote unquote, fighting against the pandemic, I guess, trying to bring back the life that was lost. He was not that character at the beginning of the series, and by the end, he has family. He has, I think a couple of girls, maybe like a boy or two, and he actually marries the woman that hit him with the sandbag that took him away from Kirsten 20 years ago, and he ends up having just amazing rapport with that actress. I don't have her name up right now. Let me see. Yeah, I don't have it up in front of me, but yeah, I was very happy to see, Jeevan find love. And there's like just sweet scenes of like Jeevan and this other actress. He just kind of goes in, and I think normally we'd be used to like, all right, this is the scene where they normally make out, and then all of a sudden they're going to make love, and then they're going to be in love, but he goes in there and he just goes in for a flat out hug, puts his like head on her shoulder, and really just gets, that type of affection that he's kind of been lacking and hasn't had in years at that point. And it just hit me in, a lower spot. It's finding emotions, and when you're trying to eat an apple, or, it feels like you're eating an apple, and you can't swallow because, you're about to cry, kind of thing. It felt like that. The emotions are so high, and it's so grounded and real that I was like, this is, at certain points of watching this, it didn't feel like I was watching a television show anymore. It felt like I was watching almost like a documentary series of something like happening. I was like, this is, it's beautiful. It's absolutely amazingly done. I don't know how better to describe it, but yeah. So what else do we have? This final episode. Let's talk about a little bit more about the final episode and kind of how everything kind of culminates. We have this child cult group led by Tyler, who is extremely vengeful, and he's got this big overarching plan to overthrow the airport, which Clark is basically holding down his fort, and trying to make sure that, the people are quarantined in certain areas if they might get exposed, trying to bring some sort of a community and balance to what's going on. I was just like, this is feels very real of what would happen if there was a group of people stuck at an airport, and we had somebody of Clark's nature showing up, thinking that he's the lead in Shakespeare, and then actually becomes the leader, or quote unquote king of the airport, and people originally are listening to him, and then later just like, this guy is just like off his fucking rocker. I love the world building in this. I'm not sure if I've talked about that enough, just how the descent of the world would happen, and how they turn small places in the airport into like learning facilities. They really rebuild uh, a lot of civilization with regards of how they're raising children, educating children, they're feeding them. They have a small farm, I think, outside of the airport. They're really trying to build a homestead there. As bleak as everything is, they really do push that to a degree, and they have like the museums of all the tech that's there, and the art that's obviously on display. And a lot of these groups that they run into as well, you'd think you run into a lot of groups, you really only run into like one or two groups, like the bandits, I think, were one, but then the cult being another, but a lot of them don't want to they don't want to interact, or come in close encountered with other groups as well. Dan Romer, the music is performed by him, really has some amazing cues in this as well. I just want to give a quick shout out to that, and to his work on here. Let me see anything else that we have got to discuss. There's all the supporting cast. I know I'm kind of jumping around. Timothy Simmons is playing Jim, Miranda's coworker, who's very blasé. He's like, oh, there's a pandemic. Oh, well, I'll just I'm gonna go play like 18 holes, and then when I get back, we'll be good. The pandemic will be over. And I thought that was a very insightful character to have on the show, because he kind of represents the characters that didn't really believe, or didn't really take into account how serious the implication of having a pandemic would be. He represents the crowd that probably were like, COVID's probably not going to be a big deal, or it'll be over in like 1 or 2 weeks or something like that. And I totally understood and somewhat related to him, because I wanted to believe that, but I was overly cautious, not overly cautious, but I was willingly overly cautious at the beginning of COVID-19, spraying down all my groceries and stuff like that, because I swear they're saying that it could just pass through, touch. We didn't know anything about this virus really at the beginning. And I feel like he kind of represents that as well. And unfortunately, Jim doesn't make it. He kind of goes down with, as Miranda does, but it's sad how they kind of end, their story ends, and the hotel stuck together, but at least they were together. And I'm glad that they have that detail of a character in there. There is an adopted sister. This is one of my critiques that are in, obviously, all of Kirsten's family in the show, when she's in the Traveling Symphony, is obviously adopted, kind of. So her young sister, played by Philippine Vague, I think, her name is Alexandria, the character is. And once Alexandria is kind of supposed to be a little bit lured, not to the dark side, but lured towards the cult side that Tyler is running at that point as the prophet, kind of being a free bird there. I think we needed a little bit more meat on the bone for that character. There's not a whole lot of scenes where we kind of like engage with Alexandria and Kirsten. I feel like they have good rapport, but they don't share enough scenes to really hit the umph on, if something bad were to happen to Alexa, would we really, Alexandria, would we really care? And honestly, there were several episodes. I think there was like an episode where she's running through a minefield, and I was like, holy shit, she's about to explode. But also on the other side, I was like, I really don't know if I'd care if she'd explode, because they haven't really done the legwork to kind of make this a real formative character. And she kind of acts way younger than she would really be. There's like a handful of scenes that I really enjoyed. She talks about like, I wasn't alive during iPhones. Kirsten, tell me about iPhones, tell me about Uber, tell me about music, all of that stuff that I missed out because she was either too young to remember or wasn't born at that time. And so I enjoyed those scenes, but they were just a little bit too far and in between. So yeah, my only critique would probably be like, if we could have maybe like 20 more minutes just with Kirsten and Alexandria in an earlier episode, I think it would have given us a little bit more ethos between the two, I guess, or pathos just between the two, to kind of understand Alexandria's motivation for wanting to leave the traveling symphony and kind of go be more, or do something else, not perform all the time. And so, yeah, we have the prophet played by Daniel Zavato. Obviously, at the beginning, we don't really understand his motives, and it seems like it's very nefarious. I mean, they kill, what's his face? And I think it's episode 5. David Cross's character. David Cross's character is Gil. He's a founder of the Traveling Symphony and Sarah's former partner. So yeah, we do get a earlier scene with Gil. So we see how Kirsten is interacting with young Alexandria, and their formative, the beginning of their relationship, and then how Gil kind of factors in, and how he's willing to kind of step in and help and sort of raise a little bit both of them at the same time. So he's kind of like their quote unquote like grandpa figure, but he ends up getting blown the fuck up by his kids. So his kids are kidnapped by the prophet, and it's a little bit unclear about how big the prophet's cult actually is. It's like this cult of kids looking like the children of the corn kind of ish. And the prophet, what he does is he settles in the encampments of where he's staying, of who he wants to kind of take advantage of, and then at night he'll steal the children. And that's kind of what he had told the troop he was going to do. He said he was going to, I guess, I think he said he was going to kill Lori and maybe kill Kirsten's sister. And that's when Kirsten stabs him in like episode 2 or 3. You're like, Jesus, she just like took this dude out, like gutted him like a fish almost. And so Tyler is just he's kind of on the back burner after he's hurt. I mean, he's always a very chill guy, but now he's like, can't do anything super aggressive or violent at that point, because he's, been stabbed. And if you're stabbed at the end of the pandemic, you can't go to the hospital, so you can only do so much to make you feel better. So yeah, they basically cross paths. They run into Gil's land. They go to his house where the country club is, and they really have a kind of some backstory of how the Traveling Symphony was really working when Gil was in it. And I think Sarah was either his like actual partner. I know that they're co-founders of the Traveling Symphony, but I don't remember if that was like his squeeze or something like that. If they were like companions in that way or something. But yeah, there's a little bit of friction of how that continued. I think Gil just decided he didn't want to do it anymore, so he stays there. Continuing on kind of with the Children of the Corn and Tyler and that, all that ish, we kind of find out how Tyler is intertwined with the people at the airport, and his mother, what was her name, like Emily or something like that. I don't have his mother's name up. Arthur's first wife, Danielle Deadweiler. Okay, Elizabeth. Sorry, Arthur's second wife, Elizabeth, and Tyler's mother, who became a famous actress in Germany, German cinema. Uh, so yeah, she's kind of a little bit bougie. It definitely feels like some people are jealous of her, and it's interesting to see what would happen to someone famous when the world comes to an end. Are you still famous? Do people still give a shit? Or are they giving you shit now? What's the deal? And I think Tyler has a real big grudge against her, and the way that she was kind of keeping him away from Gail Garcia, Arthur's character, and kind of blames her for a lot of things. But there is this amazing reuniting of the two back at the end of the series, and there's multiple times where you think Clark is going to have to take out Tyler, or Tyler is going to take out Clark, and people kind of come to a critical consensus that people don't, not everything has to end in blood, and I think that's where they found the peace in this series. Let me kind of just give the actual synopsis or the premise for this very final episode, and we'll kind of close out there. At the outset of the virus outbreak, Miranda asks Clark to care for Elizabeth and Tyler. Before her death, she calls the pilot of the plane arriving from Chicago and convinces him to keep all the passengers on board when arriving at Severn City Airport to protect those inside. There is a very interesting subplot with this plane that is outside that has landed and parked outside of the airport, but the passengers eerily never leave the airplane. It is kind of like something that I think the average viewer would probably forget after a while, because they only show the plane here and there, but then eventually someone comes out of there, and I think that's what was the impending cause for there's a guy that's infected that kind of comes out of the airplane somehow, and then Tyler comes in contact with them, and then Tyler brings him into the airport, and then basically he's put in trouble, not put in trouble, he's quarantined with his mother in an airplane after Tyler's trying to help this guy, and this guy is shot immediately by the people inside. And so Elizabeth and Tyler have to quarantine for a month, I believe, in the airport hangar. Also, Clark forms a relationship with one of the guys that are in the airport, which I feel like would naturally happen if you were stuck in an airport with a group of people. So, Miranda is the one that basically saves everyone inside by giving that phone call to the airplane. Somehow, I don't remember exactly how she got in touch with the people that were flying the plane, but that's how that went. In the present, Kirsten and the Traveling Symphony are freed from their quarantine to perform a play for the community at the airport. Jeevan also arrives at the airport to tend to Clark's burn injuries after the museum, and sits with Sarah as she peacefully passes away. It's kind of a lot to handle watching Sarah. I don't remember exactly what happened. She has like a heart condition or something like that. She's having breathing problems, and she's like falling down, and it's almost as soon as she's kind of like the Moses figure of, when she takes him to the land of freedom, but then can't make it herself. That's what she was kind of evoking in my mind. So Sarah peacefully passes away. The Traveling Symphony performs Hamlet. Kirsten reveals her connection to Arthur, to Elizabeth, and Clark, who agreed to let Tyler perform as Hamlet, while they will play Gertrude and Claudius. And I'm sure there's things about this Hamlet play that I'm like in the dark about that reflect the actual show as well. They're like, oh, these characters are playing their, the same characters they would be playing. They're technically playing in Station 11, just different forms of them and updated for a different time. But it's amazing how what felt like the writing on the play was reflecting how they were feeling as well. So yeah, they let Tyler and everyone play. Obviously, they don't know who Tyler is at that point. During the play, Tyler pulls a knife on Clark, who says he loved Arthur too. Tyler forgives Clark and Elizabeth. One of the prophet's children suddenly appears at the airport wearing a landmine, and Kirsten shows her the Station 11 graphic novel to show her it was only a story. Jeevan finally reunites with Kirsten. Elizabeth and Tyler peacefully leave the airport with hundreds of children, including Alex, who makes up with Kirsten. Jeevan and Kirsten go their separate ways, but promise to reunite next year at the airport, which Kirsten adds to the wheel. And I just want to say before we kind of wrap this one up, all these kids are, they are following, they're following the prophet, aka Tyler, in accordance to what is happening in the comic book of Station 11. They believe in this like Messiah-esque Dr. 11 figure. And I love how they have like these surreal moments of like this astronaut showing up and kind of overlooking the story and whatnot. I was really floored. There's so many scenes in this series that really just add so much texture and give so much depth to the characters. I can't say it enough. But yeah, I absolutely love this show. I know I can't go through this scene by scene, but I would absolutely recommend watching this. If you just listen to this and haven't watched it, it would still work. I watched it twice and I was like, I would still probably go back and watch it just to kind of experience all this. It was just, it was a lot to, handle and kind of take in, but in all the best ways. And of course, there's a lot of reflection and art of, what's happening here. Let me see if there's anything fun that I can bring up with the Did You Knows. The Gitchigumi means big water in Obiwi, one of the Native American tribes located in Michigan, is commonly used to refer to Lake Superior. What's it? At the end of the brief conversation in the airport, the man in the Homeland Security windbreaker says to Clark, "Stay out of my beach community." This is a line from the Coen brothers film, The Big Lebowski. The line is spoken to the dude played by Jeff Bridges, to whom Clark, with his unkempt beard, sunglasses, and cardigan sweater, bears a notable resemblance in the scene. I kind of see it now that they say it. Also, when the customer is complaining at the boarding gate, the customer is wearing a Hawaiian shirt similar to James Cole in 12 Monkeys. Station 11 plot is very similar to the 1995 film 12 Monkeys, which has a very similar premise. I did not know that. I actually haven't seen 12 Monkeys. I think that's with Bruce Willis as well. Maybe go back and check that one out. But yeah, there's a lot of there is a lot of behind the scenes interviews and stuff with the actors and whatnot. I would recommend go ahead on YouTube if you're not already on there. Check out some of those podcasts and stuff like that that cover the making of, what they were thinking at the time. We have amazing scenes like Frank Chowdhury showing back up after he's dead and around Jeevan and just going for a walk. I was just like floored by the level of detail that they would just have that type of scene playing, um, and then obviously everything else in between with all these other amazing characters. And, just small scenes like that were what really made it for me. The dancing, the Tribe Called Quest, the making of the ridiculous outfits that they're wearing at the apartment, reenacting some Station 11 stuff when it's young Kirsten, Jeevan, and Frank, and then they are actually attacked by somebody. And I think Kirsten says like, "Oh, Jeevan, you're the one that's going to die," or something like that. But then actually, it's like Frank. It's like, oh shit! It's like, it actually did happen in the show. And it's kind of crazy how they're being attacked and they're all wearing these like cardboard box, ridiculous outfits and having to bury Frank, wearing, the Station 11 outfits and stuff like that. I thought that was brilliantly done and also very sad to watch as well. It's just horrifying. Anything else? Like there's so many things I could continue on about this show, but I'm going to kind of cut it off here. Anything else? I think that is about it. But let me know what you thought about Station 11. Let me know what you thought about the podcast. If you have anything else you want to add to it, throw it in the comment section. I appreciate it. How I can improve, all that other good stuff. But yeah, all right, everyone. Take it easy.